Why do Christians not celebrate Passover? Here's an interesting verse in the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 14. It says, "This day you are to commemorate for generations to come. It is to be an eternal, lasting ordinance to you." What's God talking about? He's talking about Passover. Why do Christians not celebrate Passover? When God says you're to commemorate this for generations to come, it is to be a lasting ordinance to you, do we think God just changes his mind? Is God just a chatterbox? Do we serve a chatty God? Do we serve a God who uses words lightly and loosely? Because that's what most of replacement theology, Christianity, would tell us. Oops, God had this covenant that he ordained for generation after generation after generation, but then, oops, the Jews didn't receive Jesus, so they're out. And the feasts are canceled. And the Old Testament doesn't speak to us today. Folks, I'm telling you, you go on to dangerous, shaky ground when you have a God who is fickle, when you have a God who is changeable, when you have a God who instantly decides to get rid of the promises that he's made. All right, Passover. Passover is this fascinating holiday. It is the epic story, honestly, of every human being who wants to journey into the promised land that God has ordained for them. Every one of us have been in slavery. Every one of us have had a Pharaoh. Every one of us needs a Moses. Every one of us has a Red Sea to cross. Every one of us needs a miracle-working God. Every one of us needs a Passover. And I want to invite the Christian church to rediscover the power, the beauty, the epic story of Passover. Exodus chapter 12, God brings Israel out of Egypt. There is that covenantal sign of the blood on the doorposts. And the children of Israel gather around. They eat that meal in haste because the next day they are about to go forth into the land of their inheritance. But they're not just going. What does Moses say to Pharaoh? Moses does not say, "Let my people go." That's what we think of. That's what we think of. Let my people go. It's not what it says. Moses says, "Let my people go so they may worship me." God doesn't bring us into freedom just to come out of our past. God brings us into freedom to bring us into purpose, into his presence, into a sense of divine journey where we partner with God in the redemption of all creation. God wants to write you into his story, history. And when we encounter Passover, we encounter all of human weakness. Moses was a murderer. Moses was a murderer. He fled and ran away. I mean, it was like America's Most Wanted. He's living out in the desert because he is ashamed and afraid of his past. But God has a call on Moses' life. And God appears to him in that burning bush. And I want to tell you, God wants to give you a burning bush experience. God wants to give you a moment of divine interruption. For you, it might be this little message right now. There have been moments in my life, the most random thing. I said, that was the voice of God. That was an interruption from another place that came and that is saying to me, hey, get in touch, get in step with what I have for you. Passover tells that story of the places in our life where God interrupts us and brings us back to who he's called us to be. Moses was saved when Pharaoh was killing all of the babies because God had his hand on Moses' life. You're still here for a reason. That divorce didn't finish you off. That drug addiction didn't cancel you. those mistakes you made in your past, they have not overwhelmed the purpose of God. You cannot overwhelm the purpose of God in your life except by saying no. But if you will give God your yes right now, today, the Passover story tells us that God will bring you into a place of miraculous demonstration and he'll begin to lead you out of Egypt. Is it going to be easy? No! It is not going to be easy. And if you go to a Christian church that tells you it's going to be easy, they're lying to you, and get out of there and find a different church. The life of faith is hard. The life of belief is hard. It's glorious. It's powerful. It's amazing. I'm filled with gratitude for it, but it is not easy. Why? Because we have generations of Adam's fall. We have generations of bad decisions that are living in our being, that are warring in our being. Paul calls that our carnal nature, that is at war with our highest purpose, at war with the Spirit-birthed purpose for us. But God is sending that Moses. God is sending that deliverer. God sent Jesus, Yeshua, to be our universal Moses, to lead us out of captivity and bondage into the place of presence and purpose. So today I want to invite you to remember that Passover is not a Jewish holiday. It's not a Jewish holiday. Passover is a holiday for every person who calls on the God of the Bible, the God of the universe, creator God, and says, God, you have a better plan for my life, and you appointed this day called Passover. It's your appointed feast, and you've called it to be celebrated time immemorial, generation after generation. Why? Because in every generation, God is saying, let my people go, that they may go and worship